Right, it's time now for Focus, and to mark World Water Day, we have a report from Pakistan where there's a water crisis. With its largely agriculture-based economy, Pakistan has the world's fourth highest rate of water use, a study warning the country may run dry by 2025. This report by Taha Siddiqui with Emerald Maxwell.
Fantastic, there's water. Come on, come this way.
The scene is the same every morning. This tanker is the only source of water in this poor neighborhood in Royal Pandi, a city that borders Pakistan's capital.
Life is hard for us. There's no water in our homes. We have to fill these cans with water. We need it for drinking and for our daily use.
There is some order to the chaos here. One by one, they all fill as many jerry cans as they can, as quickly as they can. They've not had a steady supply for weeks.
There's less water available in the city these days, and our water supply system has broken down. So people don't have any other options but to come here.
Start the pump.
In the countryside, it's a different story.
Fantastic, the water flows very well.
Even though there's a shortage of water in the city, here, a lot of it gets wasted. Waqas Jamil's family has owned these lands for generations. They pump the underground water and use these poorly made canals to irrigate, wasting nearly 40% of the water in the process.
You can see how water's wasted. We can't do anything because this canal is made of mud. The water leaks out to other fields, even if they do not need to be irrigated, which is harmful for the crops.
The agricultural sector uses 96% of the country's water resources. Almost all the irrigation systems resemble the one in Waqas fields. As a result, Pakistan is today one of the most water-stressed countries in the world.
We know there's a shortage of water in many parts of the country and that here the water flows in abundance and we waste it. But we cannot afford to upgrade our infrastructure.
If the water level continues to drop at this rate, production in the fields will be reduced by a quarter by 2050, and farmers will eventually run out of water. A drastic scenario for an economy that's heavily dependent on agriculture. The government has recently started modernizing the irrigation systems to conserve this rare commodity.
Here are the main parts of our irrigation system. There is an electric motor, a pump, and a meter to calculate the water.
In these fields, there's no more flooding. These small pipes use half the amount of water and reduce costs by 35%.
The water comes down from the main unit, and as you can see, there are holes in the pipe. Thanks to this, the water drips drop by drop. And plants receive the amount of water that they need, and waste is avoided.
But this initiative is a drop of hope in an ocean of despair. Shamsul Mulk worked for Pakistan's Water and Power Development Authority for 30 years. For him, the root cause is mismanagement by the authorities.
Pakistan should be building dams so that it can use the water judiciously around the year, so that the water in summer does not become a threat, and its shortage in winter does not become a threat.
Pakistan has the world's second smallest water reserve per capita. A recent study says the country will reach absolute water scarcity by 2025.
For more on this, I'm now joined in the studio by Olivier Guillard. He's a South Asia expert working at the Institute of International and Strategic Relations. Hello, thank you very much for coming in. So, how did the water situation in Pakistan get so bad?
It gets so bad. But basically, if you permit me, it's a very sad situation. It's a very, very sad story because it's not a new problem. For a quarter century ago, I was, by the way, living in this country, we already knew about that. So while I do fully agree with the former executive manager saying that it's probably the main fault is about the mismanagement from the authority, it's true. It's it's a very well documented problem in this country. I give you an example, if you permit me. At the moment, we have a prime minister. This is his third mandate. He was already in charge in the 1990s, in the 2000 and so on, and now for the last 3 years. So he's aware of that, of this problem, for at least one generation.
So why isn't anything being done?
Because, we are... That a different explanation probably. One is that we build this part of... Pakistan still is part of the developing world, so you don't have probably enough monies, enough means, etc. And the sense of urgency is not the same in this country than in the Western world, for instance. The second thing is that there is obviously a lack of political will to change things in this country, or whatever the reason. Another explanation would be that there is a tremendous impact of corruption in this country and in the water system as well. If you have water, you have power. If you have power, you remain in charge for the next generation and so on, whatever the province, Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, and so on. So, and by the way, you know that the people suffering the most are the people who have the less rights and whose voice is probably minimized. Landlords, powerful people, industrial men in charge of large companies, they don't really care about that because they...
But it's not in their interest to let the situation carry on as it is.
Obviously, but if you discuss with the people on the ground, they tell you, we know, sir, about that, and we are facing the state is going to do something, but it has not... The last time I heard from the Pakistani side a very serious initiative, it was already 6 or 5 years ago. I was back on the same place in Punjab, by the way, Punjab province, where your very good reportage was done, and things have hardly changed. I mean, there is a very slight and improvement, and so once again, you have 200 million people living in this country. They are aware of this problem. The authorities are aware of the problem, but at the same time, they still wait until it's too late, which is a main fault from the government.
What about regional issues? Does part of the problem stem from the fact that perhaps there are different ways of dealing with different problems across the country and perhaps not much management across these various regions?
That could be part of the problem too. This is a country where you have 4 main different provinces, and they are most of the time fighting each other, between jealousy to saying why this neighboring province has that and why don't we have that. So it doesn't help, of course. Once again, even if we're a bit tough with Pakistan today, the point is that the governance in this country is pretty bad. It's not a new problem as well. It's the same case for already decades. And once again, this country is always between two opposites. There is the military rule saying if the situation is getting worse, we are getting back. And on the other side, we have a fragile democracy that say that is really reluctant to take risk. And so in between, you have these 200 million people suffering permanent amount of various problems, security problems, energetic crisis, water crisis, socio-economic, very unstable situation. So,
and are they too concerned, sorry to interrupt, but with day-to-day just feeding themselves and drinking water that they don't have the energy or the means to even protest?
It's maybe the situation is a bit different due to the fact that in this country that is supposed to be a democracy for decades, as long as you do not threaten the local stability, you are able to protest and to say, dear government, this is your duty to cope with this problem. But still, depending on the situation locally, regionally, or depending on the situation with India, which is the neighbor, always, it is quite frequent in this country that whenever something is getting bad in this country, the fault is supposed to come from the neighboring Indian country.
Tell us a bit about that, India, Pakistan, in terms of water. What's the issue?
The issue is that these two countries have been at war for four times since the independence. And to prevent a war coming from water issues, in the 1960s, they have been able, and it's a good thing, to settle an agreement, a treaty. It's the Indus Water Treaty, and to the great surprise to many observers, it remains into force 50 years later. The thing is that all the main waters flowing through Pakistan first come from India. And so there is a certain amount of fear from the Pakistani government saying that in case we have another very big and important crisis with India, India could eventually, to a certain extent,
turn the tap off.
And no, it has not happened so far. But recently, last year, for instance, we had the current Indian Prime Minister saying, water and blood cannot flow at the same time. That means that if Pakistan is still responsible for having a very light hand on fighting terrorism, we may eventually change the water issue with our neighbor, which would create a huge crisis in the subcontinent, of course.
All right, well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis, Olivier Guillard. And